Canon just announced the new Canon EOS R full frame mirrorless camera, and everybody's going all crazy about it. But I got 5 reasons why you may want to skip this camera. Stay tuned.
Flash Film Media presents What You Need to Know.
What's going on, guys? Ty Turner here, creative director here at Flash Film Media, and let me get straight to it. No way, shape, or form do I want to bash the guys at Canon, because I applaud them for at least making an attempt to enter the market. But as I always predicted, we'll get into the top 5, because there's something that I've always predicted that is one of the reasons why I created this video. So let's just talk about it. Let's just go straight into it. The number 5 thing that absolutely sucks about the new Canon EOS R is the video feature. You get 4K at 30 frames a second with a 1.7 crop. Didn't we complain about that with the 5D Mark IV? You get no 4K 60. You get 120 frames only at 720p. Is that even acceptable anymore for a full frame camera, for a flagship camera? 1080p at 60 frames a second. I think right now for a flagship mirrorless camera, 4K 60 is the standard. Like, nothing else after the GH5 should come with anything less than 4K 60. The number 4 thing, which is huge, and you'll be surprised it made it this high on my list, is the fact that it only has 1 card slot. Listen, I want to root for Canon. I grew up on Canon, but come on, Canon, you had to be listening to the people that griped about the Sony cameras and every other camera that calls itself professional with 1 camera slot. It's just not acceptable no more for any camera that's over the $1,500 mark. If you ask me, any camera that's over $1,500, you gotta have 2 card slots, because only professionals can afford to spend $2,000 for a camera, or want to spend $2,000 on a camera. Everything below that is people scratching their head and thinking, do I really need more than my iPhone? With the exception of some really killer cameras like the A6500. Number 3 is, it's the same sensor as the 5D Mark IV. Pretty much same technology as the 5D Mark IV, just in a smaller body. It's a little overpriced. Yeah, you get 30 megapixels, but megapixels aren't everything. And I think I would rather see it around the $2,000 mark at the 20 megapixel than to be around 2,400 at 30 megapixels. Some people would argue that, and I think that's arguable. I think I can understand either way, but megapixels aren't, they're just kind of fluff at this point, unless you're doing some serious landscape. It's either 40 megapixels or like 20. Like, those are the only 2. Like, anything above that is like medium format size, or for some crazy posters. I just, megapixels aren't what they used to be as far as a selling feature to me. Number 2 is 5 frames per second. Compare it with the other Nikon and Sony lineup around that price, and 5 frames per second is just unacceptable. And the number 1 reason why this camera sucks is it's not a game changer. Canon is basically saying, hey, I know you're stuck with a lot of Canon glass. We're gonna give you something just so you won't go to Sony. And my argument with that is this: it's just if you have a 5D Mark IV, there's no way you would buy this camera, because you're buying the same camera, just a smaller version. So now you spent $3,200, $3,800, $3,500 on a camera that you're trying to sell and maybe get $3 grand for, but you're not, because who's going to buy your used 5D Mark IV when they can get this camera? It's the same camera, the same specs. If you have a 5D Mark IV, you have about a week to sell it, because after that, you're not going to be able to get $2,000 for that camera. Now, there are some things I like about the camera. Of course, dual pixel autofocus is in a class of its own, and if you ask me, it's the only thing Sony needs to defeat to conquer all of the camera industry right now. It's dual pixel autofocus. When Sony comes out with a beast of a autofocus, and trust me, they're trying their damnedest to, when they come out with an autofocus that's second to none, they will have dominated the camera market. I like the fact that it offers 10-bit output via HDMI, but it's cropped. That is, gosh, Canon, come on. Like, that's how I knew Canon wasn't gonna bring it as far as the video side on this camera, because they have too many cameras. They need to simplify their cameras. They need three cameras, three: high, medium, low. That's it. Kind of what Sony's doing, you know, A9, A7, and then 3 different variations of the A7. So they got 3 different lineups. They have too many cameras. They are their own worst enemy. I do like the technology with the 3rd ring on the lens, though it feels kind of gimmicky. I do kind of like it a little bit. I do kind of like it just a little bit. To me, this is not enough to stop Canon's bleeding. I mean, Sony offers you the exact same thing with a better camera body. And like I said, the A7S III, it's probably going to be crazy. Like, they're probably going to put a nail in the coffin of Nikon and Canon with the A7 III's. I can just see it happening, and that's kind of why they're sitting back waiting to launch it. You know, Canon doesn't, the big thing with Canon and Nikon, and the reason they have a client base, is because of their lenses. And the thing about this is their adapters have to be freaking flawless, because if you lose any performance in their adapters, there is no reason for you not to go with a Sony, because you can still adapt all of your Nikon and Sony lenses. The great thing about the Sony is you can still adapt Nikon and Canon mount lenses. So what's good about a Sony is I can go get a Nikon mount lens or a Canon mount lens and a Sony mount lens, and there is no problem. I can pop those bad boys on. All that glass that you're holding on to, and it's your reason not to switch over to Sony, is the reason you should switch over to Sony. And it's not about, like, don't get me wrong, I love the Sony products, and it's not about being a Sony fanboy. It's about supporting whoever gives me the most bang for my buck. And it's time to start looking at companies like Sony and Fuji and Panasonic, because they're bringing it. And Nikon and Canon, which has this huge large camera or lens lineup, they're sleeping right now. This move makes Canon relevant, but that's it. It's comparable to an A7 R2. It's not a game changer, and that's the problem. That's what we don't get from Canon or Nikon anymore. We don't get game changers. We don't get market disruptors, and we need that. We need that. The TV industry has market disruptors. Vizio was like a market disruptor in the TV industry, which helped bring prices down, quality up, and it helped the consumer. And right now, Nikon and Canon are just trying to stay relevant. I'm gonna give you enough features to make it difficult for you to leave, or give you an excuse not to leave Canon with all your glass. But the truth is, you can leave Canon and take all of your glass with you. There's a lot of great adapters out that will work perfectly. I like EF glass. You know, we have plans on purchasing Reds, maybe the new Blackmagic, and we plan on adapting everything to EF glass. So I like with my Sonys, I can still buy a ton of EF glass. I like the fact that I can buy a lot of old vintage glass, and it works perfectly with my Sony. So that flexibility is something that I love. And you know, I think that's important. That's one of the key features of leaving Canon, is the fact that I can adapt so many different pieces of glass to my Canon. So I got that 42 megapixel A7R III through some old vintage glass that looks excellent. All right, guys, I'm gonna ask you guys to do what I ask you guys to do every week. Like, share, subscribe. Let's talk about this in the comments. I love to hear what you say. Some people think I'm bashing Canon and Nikon. Some people think I'm not. I'm just being honest. If I had to spend my hard-earned money on a camera right now, would I be buying the new Canon? No. I still own a ton of Canon glass. I still got a lot of Sigmas and a lot of Canon glass. Would I still buy a Canon? No, I wouldn't, because I love to use my DSLRs or my mirrorless for video. I like things like eye autofocus, and the new Canons have like a pupil detection and things like that. It's okay. However, it's not eye autofocus. And the only thing Sony has to do is defeat dual pixel autofocus, and they have a flawless victory. So again, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Tell me what you think in the comments. Let's talk about it. I'll see you guys next video.